There's a fruit that Buddhist monks have been eating for over 2,500 years to achieve mental clarity during meditation. The ancient Greeks believed it was the food of the gods. Chinese emperors hoarded it, thinking it would grant them eternal life. And here's the kicker. It grows like an absolute weed, survives freezing winters, laughs at drought, and can live for over 200 years producing fruit the entire time. So why have you probably never heard of it? And why isn't it taking over every backyard in America? Keep watching and you'll find out exactly why this forgotten fruit deserves a spot in your garden, and why the agricultural industry really doesn't want you to know about it. The jujube. Sounds like something a jazz musician would say, right? But this unassuming little fruit has a resume that would make an avocado jealous. We're talking about a tree that can survive temperatures from minus 28 degrees Fahrenheit, all the way up to 104. A tree that produces fruit in poor soil, requires almost no fertilizer, barely needs water once established. And oh yeah, the fruit tastes like a cross between an apple and a date with the texture of the best candy you've ever had. But before we get into why this miracle tree isn't in every garden center in the country, let's talk about where it came from and why ancient civilizations were absolutely obsessed with it. The jujube tree, scientifically known as Ziziphus jujuba. Yes, someone actually got paid to come up with that tongue twister. Originates from China, where it's been cultivated for over 4,000 years. 4,000 years. That's longer than the pyramids have been standing. While most of the world was still figuring out basic agriculture, the Chinese had already domesticated this tree and were breeding specific varieties for different uses. And they weren't growing it just because it tasted good. Ancient Chinese medicine classified jujube as one of the superior herbs, right up there with ginseng. They believed it nourished the blood, calmed the spirit, and yes, extended life. Was that true? Considering some jujube trees in China are documented to be over 300 years old and still producing fruit, the trees themselves certainly achieved immortality. The fruit made its way along the Silk Road, spreading to Persia, then to the Mediterranean, where the Greeks and Romans absolutely lost their minds over it. The Romans called it ziziphum, and planted it throughout their empire. There are records of Roman physicians prescribing jujube for everything from insomnia to digestive issues to, and I'm not making this up, excessive talking. Imagine going to your doctor today and being prescribed fruit to shut you up. But here's where it gets interesting. Despite thousands of years of cultivation, despite being grown across Asia, the Middle East, and Southern Europe, the jujube never quite made it big in the Western world. And there's a reason for that. Actually, several reasons. And they tell you everything you need to know about modern agriculture and what we've lost along the way. Reason number 1, the jujube doesn't photograph well. Seriously. In an age where a fruit's Instagram potential determines whether it gets shelf space at Whole Foods, the jujube looks like a slightly deflated plum having a bad day. It's not perfectly round. The skin gets a bit wrinkly when it's at peak ripeness. And unlike a shiny apple or a vibrant orange, the jujube just sort of sits there looking brown and humble. No aesthetic, no pop, no social media presence. The agricultural industry learned a long time ago that people eat with their eyes first. That's why we have those perfect, identical, cosmetically enhanced apples that taste like crunchy water. That's why tomatoes are bred for their ability to survive being thrown across a warehouse. Not for flavor. The jujube never got the memo about looking pretty, so it got left behind. Reason number 2. It doesn't ship well. Wait. Before you say, but you just said it survives everything. Hear me out. The jujube absolutely survives. That's the problem. Well, that's the problem for big agriculture, not for you. See, when a jujube is fresh off the tree, it's crisp like an apple. Delicious, crunchy, sweet, but leave it for a few days and something magical happens. It starts to naturally dry on the branch or after picking. The sugars concentrate. The texture changes from crisp to chewy, and the flavor intensifies into something that tastes like nature's candy. This is actually amazing if you're eating it. But if you're trying to ship it across the country and have it look exactly the same in a grocery store as it did when picked, disaster. Supermarkets want produce that stays exactly the same for weeks. They want fruits that basically exist in suspended animation until you buy them. The jujube laughs at this concept and does whatever it wants. That's not a bug, that's a feature. But try explaining that to a produce manager whose entire job depends on consistent appearance. Reason number 3. And this is the big one. You don't need to buy a new tree every year. In fact, you don't need to buy a new tree ever. Remember those 300-year-old trees still producing fruit? Yeah. Modern agriculture thrives on obsolescence. Buy this year's seeds. Buy this year's seedlings. Sign up for our subscription service. The jujube doesn't play that game. You plant it once, and your great-great-grandchildren are still eating from it. Plus, and this drives commercial growers absolutely crazy, the jujube is almost offensively easy to propagate. You can grow it from seed, sure. But you can also take a root cutting and boom, new tree. You can air layer a branch. You can graft it onto rootstock. Basically, if you look at a jujube tree funny, it'll probably figure out a way to make more of itself. That's fantastic for you. That's a nightmare for anyone trying to make money selling trees. But let's get back to why you actually want this tree in your garden. Because the reasons are pretty compelling. First off, let's talk about that whole calms the mind thing from the title. That wasn't just ancient marketing hype. Modern research has actually backed this up. Jujube contains compounds called saponins and flavonoids that have legitimate sedative and anxiolytic effects. That's science speak for helps you chill out. Studies have shown that jujube extract can reduce anxiety, improve sleep quality, and help with stress management. They were just a few thousand years early to the research party. There are literally pharmaceutical companies right now trying to isolate these compounds to make anxiety medication. Meanwhile, you could just plant a tree and eat the fruit. But there's no patent on that, so good luck finding it recommended by mainstream medicine. Now let's talk growing conditions, because this is where the jujube really shows off. Most fruit trees are divas. Apples need a certain number of chill hours. Peaches need perfect drainage. Citrus needs warmth, and throws a tantrum if it sees a frost. The jujube is that friend who shows up to a camping trip with nothing but a smile, and somehow ends up having the best time. USDA hardiness zones 5 through 10. For those not fluent in garden zone speak, that means from Minnesota to Florida, from Montana to Texas. The jujube grows where cherries grow. It grows where figs grow. It grows in places where both of those trees would look at each other and say, "You go first." The tree can handle winter temperatures down to -28 Fahrenheit. That's colder than most freezers. And summer? Bring it on. The jujube loves heat. While your tomatoes are wilting and your lettuce is bolting, the jujube is just getting started. It thrives in temperatures over 100 degrees. In fact, the hotter it gets during fruit development, the sweeter the fruit becomes. Climate change? The jujube is ready. Soil requirements? Here's where it gets almost comical. The jujube grows in sandy soil. It grows in clay soil. It grows in alkaline soil that would kill most fruit trees. The only thing it really doesn't like is constantly wet feet. But even then, it'll tolerate periodic flooding better than most other fruits. There are jujube trees growing in the middle of the Gobi Desert. There are jujube trees growing in coastal areas with salt spray. The tree does not care about your soil test results. Water needs? Once established, and we're talking after the first year, the jujube is drought tolerant to an almost supernatural degree. Its root system goes deep, really deep, sometimes 15 to 20 feet down, finding water where other trees would just give up and die. During drought years, when everything else in your garden looks sad and crispy, the jujube will be over there producing fruit like nothing's wrong. In parts of China, they call it the tree that survives on dew. Does it need fertilizer? Not really. I mean, it'll appreciate some compost or aged manure like any plant, but it's not going to throw a fit if you forget. The tree fixes nitrogen in the soil through its relationship with certain soil bacteria. It's basically fertilizing itself. That's not me being poetic. That's actual science. The tree is out there making its own food while your roses are demanding their monthly feeding schedule. Pest problems? Laughable. The jujube has almost none. And I don't mean not many. I mean almost zero. No coddling moths like apples. No peach borers. No citrus greening disease. The tree evolved in harsh environments where it had to be tough. And it brought that energy to your backyard. Occasionally you might see some aphids. And even then, they usually don't do significant damage. Lady beetles show up, eat them. Problem solved. The most common pest problem people report with jujubes is birds eating the fruit. But that's not really a problem. That's just birds having good taste. Disease resistance? Same story. The jujube doesn't get fire blight like apples and pears. No powdery mildew. No rust, no crown rot. Nothing. Plant pathologists have studied this tree trying to figure out what makes it so resistant, and the answer seems to be everything. The tree produces its own antimicrobial compounds. The bark is tough. The wood is incredibly dense. This tree is basically the honey badger of the fruit world. Let's talk about the fruit itself, because this is where the jujube really deserves your attention. When most people first bite into a fresh jujube, they're confused. In a good way. The texture is like an apple, crisp and juicy. But the flavor is sweeter, almost tropical, with hints of apple, date, and something floral that's hard to pin down. The skin is thin and edible. No peeling required. No core to deal with. Just bite in and enjoy. As the fruit ripens, it goes through stages. It's greenish-yellow and tastes mild, almost like a slightly sweet cucumber. As it ripens, it turns reddish-brown, and the sugars really develop. The flavor becomes rich and complex. Leave it even longer, and it starts to dry on the tree or after picking. This is when it becomes nature's candy. The sugars concentrate to around 70%, which is higher than most commercial dried fruits. The texture becomes chewy. The flavor intensifies. And here's the thing that commercial agriculture hates. All these stages are good. You don't have to pick the fruit at the perfect moment or it's ruined. You can eat it at any stage. Fresh and crisp, semi-dried and chewy, also great. Fully dried like a date? Amazing. Try doing that with a strawberry or a banana. You get a 3-day window with those fruits, and then you're making smoothies to avoid waste. The dried jujube keeps for months, even at room temperature. No refrigeration needed. No fancy storage. Just dried fruit that sits there patiently waiting for you to eat it. Ancient caravans crossing deserts carried dried jujubes as emergency rations. Medieval armies included them in soldier rations. Why? Because they don't spoil. They're nutritious, and they actually taste good. That's rare. Usually, you get 2 out of 3 at best. Nutritionally, the jube punches way above its weight class. High in vitamin C, about 20 times more than apples. Good source of fiber, contains compounds that support immune function. And those calming compounds we talked about earlier. You're basically eating a multivitamin that tastes like candy. In traditional Chinese medicine, jujube is used to support digestive health, nourish the blood and yes, calm the spirit and improve sleep. There are literally thousands of years of documented use. Modern science is slowly catching up and confirming what ancient practitioners already knew. Studies show potential benefits for everything from liver health to bone density to immune function. Now let's talk about actually growing this thing. Because if I've sold you on it, and I hope I have, you need to know what you're getting into. The good news? It's easy. The bad news? You might have trouble finding the tree to buy in the first place. Because again, nurseries don't stock what doesn't sell. And what doesn't sell is usually what people don't know about. When you do find a tree, and you will if you look online or at specialty nurseries, here's what you need to know. Jujubes like full sun. Not partial sun, not dappled shade. Full blazing all-day sun. This is a tree from the semi-arid regions of Asia. It wants heat. It wants light. Give it that, and you're 80% of the way to success. Planting is straightforward. Dig a hole twice as wide as the root ball and just as deep. Don't amend the soil too much. The tree needs to adapt to what you've got. Water it in. Well, for the first year, water it regularly until established. After that, you can pretty much forget about it, except during extreme drought. One quirk about jujubes is that they leaf out late in spring. Like, really late. Your other trees will be fully leafed out, flowers blooming, birds singing, and your jujube will still look dead. Don't panic. This is normal. The tree is waiting for consistently warm temperatures. When it's ready, it'll leaf out quickly. Usually happens in late May or even June, depending on your climate. The flowers are small and not showy, but they're incredibly fragrant and the bees absolutely love them. The blooming period lasts for weeks, sometimes months, which means you get fruit ripening over an extended period. This is actually great for home gardeners. Instead of dealing with 200 pounds of fruit all at once like you would with some trees, the jujube gives you ripe fruit gradually over several months. You can actually keep up with it. Most varieties are self-fertile, meaning you only need one tree to get fruit. But having two or more can increase yields. The trees aren't too large either. Most varieties stay between 15 and 25 feet tall, and they can be pruned smaller if you want. They have a naturally attractive shape, kind of a rounded canopy with gracefully drooping branches. You don't need to be a master pruner to keep them looking good. There are dozens of varieties, each with slightly different characteristics. Lai is one of the most popular, large fruit, very sweet, ripens in late summer. Lang is another common one, slightly elongated fruit, excellent flavor, stores well. Honey jar is newer and lives up to its name. Incredibly sweet fruit that tastes like it's been candied. Sugarcane is early ripening and has a unique flavor profile that some people describe as butterscotch-like. The point is, there's variety. You're not stuck with one type. Different regions of China spent centuries developing cultivars, adapted to specific climates and uses. Some are better fresh, some are better dried, some are better for making jujube tea or wine. Yes, jujube wine is a thing, and apparently it's excellent. Here's something else most people don't know. The wood of the jujube tree is incredibly valuable. It's dense, hard, and naturally resistant to rot and insects. In Asia, it's used for high-quality furniture, musical instruments, and carving. The wood is so dense it sinks in water. Jujube wood was used for archery bows because of its flexibility and strength. So not only are you getting fruit, you're growing lumber that your descendants might use for something special in 100 years. No pressure. The tree also has that whole living forever thing going for it. There are documented jujube trees in China that are over 300 years old, still alive, still producing fruit. When you plant a jujube, you're not planting for yourself. You're planting for generations. That's a different kind of gardening philosophy than buying annual flowers or vegetables. This is legacy planting. This is thinking about your great-grandchildren. And if you're into permaculture or food forests, the jujube is absolutely perfect. It provides food for humans and wildlife. The flowers feed pollinators. The dense wood provides habitat. The deep roots prevent erosion. The nitrogen fixing enriches the soil for other plants. And it does all this while asking for almost nothing in return. It's the ultimate permaculture tree. So why isn't the jujube more popular? We've covered the commercial reasons. Doesn't ship well. Doesn't look Instagram ready. Doesn't require constant replacement. Western gardeners are obsessed with European and American fruit trees. Apples, peaches, cherries, plums. Those are what we know. Those are what our grandparents grew. There's a psychological barrier to trying something unfamiliar, even when the unfamiliar thing is objectively better for your conditions. The jujube suffers from not being part of the Western horticultural tradition. It's exotic, foreign, weird. Never mind that it's been cultivated longer than most European fruits. Never mind that it's better adapted to changing climate conditions. It's not what we grew up with, so it must be difficult or strange. But here's the thing. The climate is changing. Droughts are becoming more common. Water restrictions are expanding. Extreme heat events are increasing. All the traditional fruit trees we love are struggling in many regions. The peach trees are getting hit by late frosts. The apple trees need chill hours that aren't happening anymore. The cherry trees are stressed by heat. The jujube doesn't care. It thrives in exactly the conditions that are challenging everything else. It's drought tolerant when water is scarce. It handles heat when temperatures soar. It survives cold snaps that kill other trees. It's productive without inputs when fertilizer costs are rising. If you're looking for a fruit tree that's adapted to the future, not the past, the jujube is it. And beyond the practical considerations, there's something deeply satisfying about growing a fruit that most people don't know about. When you hand someone a fresh jujube and they taste it for the first time, you see this moment of surprise and delight. What is this? Where did it come from? Why haven't I heard of it before? You become a food educator just by growing an unusual tree. The jujube represents everything that's right about home gardening, and everything that's wrong with commercial agriculture. It's perfect for small-scale growing, productive, resilient, low maintenance. But it's terrible for industrial farming, doesn't standardize well, doesn't ship well, doesn't require ongoing purchases. That tells you everything you need to know about why it's remained obscure despite being objectively fantastic. So here's my challenge to you. If you have space for a fruit tree, even just one, consider the jujube. Look past the unfamiliar name. Ignore the fact that it's not at your local big box store. This tree has been grown for 4,000 years for a reason. Ancient civilizations weren't stupid. They kept growing it because it worked. You'll get fruit that tastes amazing. You'll get a tree that requires almost no maintenance. You'll have something unique that sparks conversations. You'll be starting a tradition that your great-grandchildren will appreciate when they're eating fruit from the tree you planted over a century ago. The jujube isn't the fruit of immortality, because it makes you live forever. It's the fruit of immortality, because the tree lives forever, producing food for generations, asking for almost nothing, surviving everything. That's a different kind of immortality. That's the kind worth planting.